A Ghost Story is an art house masterpiece and the best film I've seen in 2017 so far. If you don't like art house or having existential crises, then watch another movie. In its simplest description, A Ghost Story is about a young man who dies, comes back as a ghost, and goes back to the home that he and his wife shared. But it's a lot more than that. It is an incredible film about grief and loss and meaning and just existence itself. Pardon the corny pun that everybody's using, but it is truly haunting. It is one of the most emotionally touching and entrancing films I've ever seen in my entire life. It creates such an atmosphere of just stillness and quietness and intimacy, where we get to see these moments in multiple people's lives within the house as time goes on. And we see these little moments with people that we don't know and haven't really been introduced to yet in the film. These moments mean nothing to us as an audience, but these moments mean something to the characters. And that's what the entire film is getting at, is that life has no meaning, existence has no meaning, you have to find the meaning yourself, and we find this meaning through these little moments throughout our lives where we hang out with friends or read a book or something. It helps give us meaning. It gives us a drive and inspiration. And some people may walk away with that interpretation feeling very depressed, but this film actually had me walking away feeling very hopeful, because if nothing matters, if this is a truly meaningless world, then it is up to you to create that meaning. And I find that incredibly freeing and incredibly empowering, that it is up to you to find your truth, to find your whole point of existence. Nobody needs to tell you, you find it on your own. You're an individual, act like one. The cinematography of the film is very simple, but very beautiful and stunning. A lot of tripod shots, a lot of lockdown shots. The mise-en-scène is fantastic. If C isn't the primary subject of a shot and it's not a POV shot, he is still blurred out in the background while we're watching the subject. And oftentimes during these scenes, you will see the subject in focus, but there is a lot of depth to the image because the house that they live in the film is a very long rectangular house. So if you're on one end of the house, then you can very easily see all the way to the other end. It creates this amazing sense of depth, and there's something so beautiful about how you can have something happening in the foreground on the lower right quadrant of the screen, and then you have C standing blurred out in the upper left-hand quadrant of the screen. And then you still have the even blurrier background as the depth of the scene goes on. And it's incredible just how simple and subtle it is, but just there's a lot of meaning hidden in this movie. This is a subtle masterpiece, is what this is. The film is also shot in 4:3 aspect ratio. If you don't know what that looks like, it looks like this. It's very boxy, it's very cut off. It's not wide at all, because old film used to look like that. Old film was only made in one small little size, and it wasn't until the late 50s or early 60s that we actually developed widescreen film. Old films didn't have the rounded corners, but Super 8mm film did. If you don't know what Super 8mm film was, it was a super popular camera format that was oftentimes used for home video. And so this 4:3 aspect ratio with the rounded corners that looks like Super 8mm film evokes a sense of nostalgia from us, because this format has such an emotional connotation, because whenever we go through old family boxes and we see, 8mm film, it's a transportation of the past where our parents were younger and stuff, they were kids, or our grandparents were kids, and it's just a really interesting tool to subtly evoke and create a nostalgic feeling and atmosphere. And it also makes sense in the context of the film, because that's what C's entire meaning in the film is his love for his wife, M, and the moments that they shared together. He looks over these moments with nostalgia, and that's generally how nostalgia works, is you'll remember a very general feeling, or you'll remember a super specific moment in your life. The film also features a lot of long takes and a lot of silence. It gets you into the mood by sort of relaxing you and chilling you out and getting you ready to just absorb everything that's going to happen during the movie. And there are some shots that are so long that you're probably sitting there wondering, why are we looking at this for so long? And that's good, because that's what the filmmaker intended. He intended for you to sit there and then think, why am I seeing this? Why is this being shown to me? And that helps you become a more active audience member. This is a movie that you don't meet halfway, you gotta go all the way to the movie to understand the movie. Where it leaves a lot of ambiguity and just there's a lot of room for interpretation from the audience, and that is what he wants you to do. Art is what it needs to be for the individual, and it just keeps coming back around to the whole existentialist thought of meaning in a meaningless world is created by the individual. It's that simple. Wrap it up. We're done. We're done. But in all seriousness, that is the primary theme of the film, per my interpretation. So take that with a grain of salt or believe it wholeheartedly. It's up to you, because you're an individual. The acting in this movie is fantastic. Casey Affleck and Rooney Mara just have explosively subtle chemistry, where everything they say to each other or everything that they do around each other, we can just feel how their characters love each other. They're just people. That is the best thing that I can say about their acting. Holy shit, is Casey Affleck and Rooney Mara feel like they're just people. They just feel like people. Their acting is that goddamn good. I wasn't looking at them as Casey Affleck and Rooney Mara. I was looking at them as C and M. I was looking at them as their characters, and it just elevates the movie to like a level of masterpiece. Especially kudos to Casey Affleck, because for most of the film he's covered in a bedsheet with holes cut out for eyes, which at first seems really corny, but the movie takes that image so seriously that it is very convincing and the audience doesn't really question it. They just go along with it because it's part of the film, but it's not something that's meant there to be funny. It becomes one of the most striking images of the film, and I'm sure will endure for a long time. Rooney Mara's performance in the film is probably the best, in my opinion. Not to discredit the performance of Casey Affleck or anything, he does a great job too, but he is our protagonist, but he's not our focus, if that makes sense. He is more a silent protagonist for the audience to project emotions on and for the audience to view the events of the film through. So he is a character, but he takes a back seat because that's the entire point of his character and the point of his movie is he's a ghost. He can't interact, he can't talk, he can only watch or haunt. And so because of that, Rooney Mara isn't our protagonist, but she is the best performance in the film because we see more of her than we see Casey Affleck. And she just has this brutal realism to her grieving in the film. There's an entire 8-minute sequence with 1 or 2 cuts that is just her eating pie. And that sounds really dumb, but when you watch the movie, it makes a lot of sense, and it's actually one of the most emotional scenes of the film. And that should say something about the quality of the film, is that Rooney Mara eating a pie is one of those things that will start to make you choke up and maybe tear up a little. because there's just such a vulnerability to her performance that you don't often see in movies, and she's an amazing actress for being able to just capture that feeling of being a real person and then just seeing her become broken by the death of her husband is just terrible. Especially through C's eyes, it makes it all the more heartbreaking to know he's in the background watching her, but he can't do anything. He can't comfort her. He can't say, hey, I'm still here, don't be sad. He just has to watch her just miss him and try and live life without him and try and move on. And it's just heartbreaking. And that's part of why this movie's so great, is this is an extremely emotional movie. TLDR, if you're looking for an existential crisis, A Ghost Story is the movie for you. If you don't like art house masterpieces, you might not like A Ghost Story.